working with our customers, and I previously worked in a role as a process improvement leader where I actually helped companies, optimize their data collection, data analysis, and communication processes. There's two kind of cycles that companies get into when they're trying to use their data, right? There's the vicious cycle, which we'll talk about first. Now, what is the vicious cycle? The vicious cycle is, again, looking at it through a safety lens. If we're going to implement an observation program out in the field, right? We're requesting people that collect information, and then people are collecting that information. They're giving us observations, they're giving us inspections, they're inspecting equipment, et cetera, et cetera. And then that information comes to us, right, in the management organization for analysis, right? And then sometimes there's inaction, right? So nothing happens and kind of goes into a black hole. Every time we come around this vicious cycle, right, we're getting less data from the field and we're getting less quality data from the field, right? So we're requesting, collecting, analyzing, and it goes into a black box, right? This leads to mistrust in organizations. Right? People don't know how their information is being used. They feel like their information or their input is not valued, right? It leads to pencil whipping, right? So if you're having people collect information out in the field, they don't feel like it's getting used. It just becomes a check the box exercise. Well, they don't really care about this equipment inspection. I'm just going to check the box and move on, right? And all of that makes it very difficult to quantify results. So what's the opposite of that, right? The opposite of that, where we want to be, is in the virtuous cycle. Right? The virtuous cycle is where we are implementing a program, right? We're requesting that the field collect information. They're collecting that information. We're analyzing that information, and it's leading to action, right? It doesn't go into a black hole or a black box, right? We're actually leveraging that information to make improvements, and we're communicating those improvements to the field so they understand that their insights are valued and are being used. So what is the virtuous cycle? So the virtuous cycle leads to a better understanding of the process. People understand how their information is being leveraged and discussed and utilized for improvement. It leads to more sustained engagement, right? Because now people aren't just checking the box. They know, well, if I do a good equipment inspection on this piece of equipment, if I make a good observation about workplace hazards or conditions, that information has the potential to really be used in a meaningful way. So I'm actually going to put some time and effort into it. Right. And it really leads to ultimately more tangible results, right, that can be leveraged for improvement. Now, the tricky thing with this is that, it's kind of like an $8 and a $1,000 bottle of wine, right? I'm not a wine drinker. I don't really know the difference, right? The vicious and virtuous cycle look very similar on their face, right? But it's when you dig into the details that you figure out if you have a vicious or if you have a virtuous cycle.